Say something today about how Kenya had actually begun a process of detribalizing, around 2002 when we voted for Kibaki. And I had to admit that, some of us, there is a different generation of Kalenjins that were the first one to detribalize. And what I mean by detribalize, if you remember in 2002, the elections, when Kenya completely changed from, the Nyayo era to Kibaki and then so forth, I am among the first people that in the Kalenjin community, probably and many others, that saw that Kenya had needed something different. And I remember in my polling stations with almost less than 100 votes, we had only 8 votes for Kibaki then. My dad was this kind of Damu people, they were moi and everything. I remember when the results came in, you guys remember that project ya mzee wakati hiyo ilikuwa ni Uhuru, and of course they were in support with the current president, who were supporting him to be president. But majority of the Kalenjin community then followed what Moi had told them to do. But a few Kalenjins, a few of them, which I always consider the moment that Kenya began to detribalize, is when very few of us voted for Kibaki. But that's not the point. There is something interesting I want to tell you. Most people didn't know. I'm a proud Kalenjin. I come from the Marakwet community in the Elgeyo Marakwet. And most people don't know that by the time Moi was leaving power, there was no tarmac road in Marakwet community, by the way. In fact, for some of you that have come all the way to Iten, kuna mahali inaitwa mwisho wa lami. Mwisho wa lami. Mwisho wa lami ni penye lami ilifikia for the 24 years. In other words, the Marakwet community did not even have a single tarmac road. But then when Kibaki came in, Kibaki appointed Lina Chebik Limo the first minister in the Marakwet community. Na Lina Chebik Limo alikuja akajenga barabara kutoka Kapsowar, the headquarters of the Marakwet district, all the way from Kapsowar mpaka Chesoi, all the way to mpaka Maron. Kibaki ended up connecting lami kutoka Kachibora mpaka Kapcherop, and then Uhuru akakuja kumaliza Chebororwo mpaka Moiben mpaka Eldoret. Now, why am I mentioning these roads? When the conversation is so loud about, people being tribal, people being non-tribal, people taking advantage of others. I remember before I left Kenya, there was no tarmac road in Marakwet, I remember before I left the country, when Kibaki had just come in, there was no bank. The only bank that was available then was, Post Bank. Now, in few years during Kibaki time, we saw the way the economy changed. We saw how many of the economic activities happened to the benefit of the few. Mpaka Equity Bank ilikuja mpaka my local center. And I keep asking myself, why do our leaders always take us back to that conversation every now and then when we know the gains that Kibaki brought us? Yeah, I know there are people wenye walilalamika wakati wa Kibaki wakasema, Wakalenjin walitolewa. But then equally, there are some Kalenjins that actually felt a lot of Kibaki benefits in his presidency, despite him being a Kikuyu. Kibaki alituletea lami, Kibaki alituletea banks. There was a lot of economic gain during wakati wa Kibaki. When Uhuru Kenyatta took over, most people don't know that he did actually so much things actually in the Kalenjin community as well, that it is easy to forget. Sisi watu ambao tunatoka sehemu za Lela, Uhuru alikuja akajenga lami kutoka Kapenguria, through Kapsait, through Leland mpaka Cheptongei. Uhuru ndiye alikuja kutukonektia lami, kutoka Iten all the way mpaka Kapsowar. There are so many road projects that Uhuru did. Ukikuja hii sites ya Wazingishu, the lower sides of Chebororwo Jerangany, there are so many good roads, especially the one that it is connecting the major productive parts of Elgeyo Marakwet, which is the Marakwet sites. Kutoka Chebororwo, Moiben, mpaka Eldoret. Uhuru did an amazing road. So sometimes as a community, we need to reflect and look at these gains and stop pointing fingers sometimes that these people are just this and this, which one then they are not. The other one that it is extremely peculiar, and I know I'm going to be controversial again on this one, I had to admit it, is the way we mismanaged Rivertex. Uhuru Kenyatta, and check here, this is the news. Uhuru Kenyatta gave Rivertex 10 billion to revive. All the factories had died in Eldoret. When Moi University took over Rivertex, It was on its knees. It was dying. But then Uhuru Kenyatta came and gave Rivertex Eldoret 10 billion. That 10 billion still was mismanaged until right now, Rivertex is on its knees. Who are the people that mismanaged it? The people from my community, okay? The Kalenjin community. So sometimes when we point these flames, about others, let us do a self-reflection of what has happened in the community. If you take, for example, the Moi University, when Moi left, Moi University was doing slightly better. When Kibaki came in, it was vibrant. If we were to look at Moi University with what they have, Moi University should be among the most and the best performing universities in Africa. Why do I say so? It is the only university with the biggest huge chunk of land. It is the university that should be having serious strategic partnership with world universities for agriculture to develop some of the best food crops for the entire African region. It is the only university with the area with the best agricultural climate in the country. But you know what has happened? Our politicians, our local leaders, ndio wanatumia these institutions kupanda mahindi ya ng'ombe yao. Their universities are on its knees. In fact, the universities juzi wameuza mpaka ng'ombe, mpaka punda. I want you to imagine a great institution like that, which is supposed to be providing solutions for the community, but it is on its knees. Most people don't admit it. Moi University should be the premier of African studies in agriculture. All these serious agricultural projects that we are looking at should be happening in University of Eldoret and Moi University. Why? Because they have the lands. But our leaders would prefer to point fingers on others and not look what is happening within. In fact, the solution for employment, wakisemanga wazungu wanasemanga, Africa is the next frontier in agriculture. How can we be frontier when our universities are dying? How can we be frontier when our leaders cannot see that? They would rather take advantage of the institutions locally plus the management than to see it providing solutions to the rest of the world. Some of these things sometimes, but I know sometimes honest is not good for some people. And honesty sometimes can damage reputation for people. But that is the truth.